going to Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white. That was a real tweet posted by Justine Sacco back in December of 2013. When this was tweeted out into the world, Sacco was on an 11-hour flight from London to Cape Town, South Africa, and likely didn't think too much of it. However, little did she know that while she was in the air, this tweet would begin to spread like wildfire. It was retweeted more than 2,000 times and favorited more than 1,000. Within a matter of hours, news outlets such as BuzzFeed picked up on the tweet, and there was even a hashtag going viral on Twitter. That being #HasJustineLandedYet. Justine was going to South Africa to be with her family during the holidays of 2013, but this trip would change her life forever. 12 words, 64 characters. That's all it took for her to go down in infamy. Upon this tweet going viral, it might come as a surprise to you that Justine Sacco was fired from her job as the head of corporate communications at the New York-based internet empire Interactive Corp, perhaps better known as IAC. This company owns many large websites such as Ask.com and Dictionary.com, and so it's fair to say that Justine Sacco had quite a good job position. And it's also fair to say that as someone who worked within a company that harnessed the power of the internet, she should have known better than to post that message out there onto the web. Of course, Sacco had to make a public apology in which she said, "I am in anguish knowing that my remarks have caused pain to so many people. Words cannot express how sorry I am and how necessary it is for me to apologise to the people of South Africa who I have offended due to a needless and careless tweet." What might shock you even more is that included within the people of South Africa is Sacco's very own father. As I said, she was visiting for the holidays, and so South Africa is not only the place that her father lives, but also the place that Sacco herself was born. This sort of incredibly ignorant lapse in judgment is even more spectacular when you consider that, as someone born within the continent with close family ties to the continent, how could she post something so foolish? Was it meant to be some sort of joke? Maybe? Though many people did not find this funny if it was in fact an attempt at humour. This isn't even to mention that this tweet, which poses some sort of a correlation between AIDS and race, is not backed up by science at all. Rock Hudson had AIDS, Liberace had AIDS, that guy in the Dallas Buyers Club had AIDS. But regardless, this is one of the most infamous tweets of all time. It was quite a groundbreaking case in all of the wrong ways, so there's a fair chance I'd wager that you've seen or at the very least heard about it before. What you might not know though was that a few years later, Sacco was given a second chance at IAC. In 2018, Vox wrote that she was overseeing corporate communications for Match, a company owned by IAC, which includes online dating properties like Tinder, Match.com and OkCupid. Perhaps a lot of people watching this video might be quite outraged at this, but you have to ask, at what point should a cancellation be final? This news story was reported 5 years after the original tweets. If someone says something horrible online, do they deserve to be unemployed for the rest of their lives? Whatever you think, that's just the beginning of what I have in store for you today. If you want to hear about some of the most fascinating and controversial tweets that were deemed so scandalous they had to be unalived, that's exactly what we're doing today, so stick around. We're about to get into it right here, right now. With that said, I want to stick to the topic of regretted racism by discussing the barrier-breaking Melissa Villasenor. If you don't know her, she's a stand-up comic, actress, singer and illustrator, perhaps best known for being the very first Latina to be given repertory status on SNL. However, this accolade is not without its controversy. I've discussed this type of thing before. I think it was in my controversial podcasts video in which I mentioned that essentially when someone gets cast on SNL, Twitter just decides to go through their back catalogue and they hyperanalyze their entire family lineage and videoed history. It happened with Shane Gillis when he was cancelled just days after being announced as an SNL cast member back in 2019 for some jokes that he made at the expense of the Chinese on his podcast a few years prior, also having been known to use homophobic slurs in reference to comedians that he didn't like. Well, in the case of Melissa Villasenor, the same type of background check happened, though it wasn't as severe as it was for Gillis. After she was announced, people began to unearth some tweets that she had posted back in 2010 and 2011. Keep in mind that these tweets came to light in 2016, so they were made roughly half a decade prior, some of them even longer. What you might be quite surprised to hear, however, was just how many tweets Villasenor deleted. What do you think? 5? 10? 50? 100? 1,000? Not even. It's thought that Melissa Villasenor deleted just shy of 2,000 tweets. But there was some nuance. Just how racist these tweets were depends on what you think. Some of them were never archived, but as of the ones that were screenshotted, most seem to be jokes. My roommate's dog resembles an old Japanese man. I hate Mexicans on bikes. They threw something at my car. The world doesn't need them. Jolly black people are the best. Just laughed with one right now. Co-worker at Forever 21 dates black guys and said she'll set me up with one for Valentine's Day. I said yes, but I'm scared. Initially, both SNL and Villasenor declined to comment, but back in 2018, after the heat of the situation cooled down, Villasenor decided to finally explain herself. She said that she was just trying to be edgy and that she didn't regret deleting them. Many people on Twitter were divided on whether these were actually offensive. From what I saw, there were a lot of people excited that there would be a first Latina given repertory status, but they were disappointed in her at the same time. Others seemed not to care, as these were jokes at the end of the day. A few people pointed out that some of these jokes were harmless. Take the Mexican one, for instance. Villasenor is Mexican American. Of course, there were also some people who condemned others for reposting these tweets. These were made in the past. Villasenor had just broken ground for Latina women, and before she even had the chance to begin her job, the very people that she just paved the way for turned on her. In addition, there were some news outlets that pointed out some slight hypocrisy, that being that Villasenor was allowed to carry on as an SNL cast member, whereas John Rudnitsky, who also made some controversial tweets in the early 2010s, most of them being aimed at women, was taken off the show. Whether this was solely because of the tweets, it can't be said, but they surely didn't help. Villasenor, on the other hand, lasted 6 years at SNL before leaving in 2022, and so in this case, her deleted tweets seem not to damage her image too much in the long run. The same thing can't be said about Kevin Hart though, whose dreams of hosting the Academy Awards were shattered when people discovered the skeletons in his closet. There's a fair chance you know this story. It was quite big when it came out back in December 2018, but just in case you don't, or in case you want a reminder, let's discuss. So on the 4th of December 2018, Kevin Hart is announced as the host of the Academy Awards, a very prestigious position indeed. He was about to follow in the footsteps as the all-time greats. We're talking the likes of Ellen DeGeneres, James Franco, Alec Baldwin, Chevy Chase, and Donald Duck. I wish I was kidding about one of those, but yes, Ellen DeGeneres did actually host the Oscars. Twice, in fact. What I'm guessing at is that many people who have been subject to controversy have hosted the awards, but back in 2019, the 91st event would be without a host for the first time in 30 years. Why? Well, days after Mr. Hart was announced as the host of the ceremony, it was brought to the attention of the public that between 2009 and 2011, Hart had been posting some very naughty messages on his Twitter. Many of the most controversial of these tweets were directed at the LGBT community. Back then, Hart was frequently using derogatory language in reference to gay people, using both the words gay and homo in a negative way towards homosexuals, as well as the F-slur on multiple occasions. These tweets were very common for Hart, and even though he would delete them all once the news broke, an absolute treasure trove was screenshotted and archived before he could take them down. Many of these tweets didn't exactly seem like jokes. For example, the one about his son playing with his daughter's dollhouse, was there a punchline there? Many people would argue, no. Hart was in his late 20s and early 30s when he made these tweets too, so compared to some people who had the defense of being young and naive, Hart really didn't have much of an excuse, and as a result of this, he was stripped of this opportunity. Interestingly, Hart was initially defiant about the situation and came out on Instagram with a post in which he refused to apologise. In the video, which is still up today, he states that he's already apologised for it and that these tweets were made at another point in his life. He says that he's a different person now and that he's taking a stand against internet trolls. If the consequence of that happens to be that he can no longer host the Academy Awards, so be it.
I swear, man, our world is becoming beyond crazy. And I'm not going to let the craziness frustrate me or anger me, especially when I worked hard to get to the mental space that I am at now. My team calls me, "Oh my God, Kevin, the world is upset about tweets you did years ago." Oh my God. Guys, I'm almost 40 years old. If you don't believe that people change, grow, evolve as they get older, I don't know what to tell you. If you want to hold people in a position where they always have to justify or explain their past, then do you. I'm the wrong guy, man. I'm in a great place, a great mature place, where all I do is spread positivity. If you're not doing that, you're not on my page.
On the same day, Hart would tweet out an apology to the LGBT community though, and made the statement that it was his choice to step down from hosting. For the next 3 years, the Oscars wouldn't have a host, and in these 3 years, the awards viewership took a nosedive. The 93rd Academy Awards barely scraped 10 million views, making it the least viewed event since records began. As for Hart, these tweets, many of which were almost a decade old by this point, cost him the opportunity of a lifetime. But so far in this video, we've had quite a few intense topics, so I think it's time to scale things back and relieve the tension as we talk about something a little bit lighter. This next one is a cautionary tale about sticking in your lane. Do you know about the infamous Rita Ora tweets? So this is Rita Ora. She's a now 32-year-old British singer-songwriter with a number of hits to her name. Her debut album reached #1 in the UK back in 2012, and she's had a number of songs reach the top of the charts, albeit briefly, in the UK and Europe ever since. Now, I mean absolutely no disrespect to Ora, but I think it's fair to say that perhaps the peak of her career is now in the past. But definitely at a point in time about a decade ago, I would say that she was a fairly well-known pop singer over here in the UK. In 2015, she would be a judge on both the UK version of The Voice and the UK version of The X Factor. And so you would assume that around this time that she would have a very passionate fan base and she would have people that would go to bat for her and all that. Well, maybe not. Back in 2014, on Halloween of all days, a message was tweeted out on the official Rita Ora Twitter account that read, "Dropping my new song on Monday if this gets 100,000 retweets." What would happen next though was perhaps the most spooky thing for Rita because absolutely nobody retweeted it. She had 3.1 million followers on Twitter, so in theory she wanted 1 in every 31 of those to retweet her post. In the end, just 1 of every 1,500 would retweet, meaning that she would only garner a measly 2,000 retweets on the post. It seems as though her audience didn't care, or maybe even worse, didn't want her to release music. This is where things get even spookier though, because after this colossal failure, Rita Ora goes on to tweet some more, claiming that she was hacked. "By the way, my Twitter got hacked. Somebody is threatening to release new music I've worked really hard on. Nothing comes out until I am ready. When it's ready, we will drop music. Luckily, I caught the hacker really quick and deleted the post. Thank you." Perhaps the most funny part of this was that her post claiming that she was hacked received almost more retweets than her post promising new music. Of course, you have to ask yourself, was Rita Ora being honest? Was she actually hacked? I mean, it is possible, but I don't think so. She says that she luckily caught the hacker really quickly. I don't buy it. Would someone realistically go to all of the effort of hacking Rita Ora just to put this message out? I mean, it would be a stroke of absolute genius, the highest IQ play possible, but I also feel like they would post something else too. I think that the most simple and therefore most likely answer is that she thought this tweet would go viral, but it massively underperformed and she was forced to come out with a lie to save face. If anything, it kind of seems like someone who asks out their crush over text, and then to try and save face after they get rejected, they say, oh, I got hacked, or oh, it was my sibling that did it as a prank or something. I mean, hypothetically, it's possible. I would just say unlikely. Still, I thought that was just quite a funny story to share. And speaking of comedy, that brings us to our next topic of conversation, because it's time to talk about the Twitter fallout that came from the Nickelodeon wedding of the century between Paige O'Brien and Josh Peck. This is Drake Bell, and this is Josh Peck. This duo is best known for their time on Nickelodeon together when Drake and Josh played the characters Drake and Josh respectively in the show Drake and Josh. If you're in your late teens or early to mid-20s, there's a high chance that you know them. The show, produced by the now infamous Dan Schneider, ran for 4 seasons consisting of 56 episodes between 2004 and 2007. Drake was the cool, confident and charismatic one, whereas Josh was the more nerdy, intelligent and easily suggestible one of the pair. As with a lot of shows that kids are raised with, people form strong emotional bonds with the cast members. To a lot of these children, the characters of these sorts of shows can be a real comfort and distraction to the weight of growing up. So if they were to hear that the cast members no longer keep in touch, or worse, have some sort of disdain for each other, it can be quite upsetting. In the summer of 2017, many fans of the show were shocked, saddened, or potentially even disgusted to find out that Josh Peck had married Paige O'Brien without Drake Bell being at the wedding. They thought that the two were no longer friends, and they were kind of right. Not only was he not invited to the wedding, but he had found out that they were married via social media. It seems as though he thought that this was a betrayal, with him posting, "Loyalty is key. Always remember where you come from. When you're not invited to the wedding, the message is clear. True colours have come out today. Message is loud and clear. Ties are officially cut. I'll miss you, brother." All was not lost though, as shortly after, it seemed as though Bell had a change of heart. He would soon delete those tweets and spoke to news outlets telling them that he had been rash. He claims that he was cranky and was merely upset that it was through social media that he discovered that Peck was married. The two would eventually reconcile, and months later would be seen in a YouTube video on Josh Peck's channel titled Drake and Josh Reunion. This video would garner 13 million views, and it seemed as though the two had made up.
Holy come on. What's up, buddy? Is this happening right now live is this really right now live?
Stream live right now.
Oh my god.
Please
Wait,
tell
is this
Facebook
streaming?
to be nice to me.
Oh my god,
Please.
it's not even my fault.
Just tell Facebook to be nice to me.
Listen, lay off.
Thank you. You heard that? Facebook, it's all good.
Chill out.
We love
lay
y'all.
off, man. Alright,
I got $100 for you.
Sweet.
What's so bad?
This is real life. This is it.
Live right now.
You're welcome, childhood.
It just feels right.
Though, not quite. Josh would later come out on the BFF podcast to say that he had a soprano moment in which, upon seeing Drake at the MTV Music Video Awards, he demanded him to march over to his wife and apologise. Drake had tweeted Josh on his wedding day, which, as we've already established, he would later delete. But he also private messaged him whilst in a rage that very same night.
The dirty little secret, I guess, was like, I knew that Drake and I didn't stay in touch for the 10 years since we had made the show, but no one needed to know that. Like, I was happy to just die with that secret that, like, we made this thing that people really love, but maybe we weren't that close. Cut to, I'm getting married that night, and I see these text messages from him, like, cursing me out, coming for me. I'm like, on the night of my wedding. And I'm like, he's surprised, but then he takes to the internet and he starts writing these tweets that immediately, like, catch fire. And I remember that I was at the Video Music Awards and I see him there and he sees me. And I go up to him, like, and this might be the most Sopranos thing I've ever done. And I look at him and I go apologize to my wife right now. And he goes, okay. And he, like, made a beeline for my wife, and I see him do, like, this whole 5-minute performance of an apology. And it was like, I was like, go apologize to my wife or something bad's gonna happen.
The weird thing is though, Josh's recollection on the BFF podcast didn't really seem to match up to his vlog.
Come on. What's up, buddy? Is this happening right now live as we... Is this really right now live?
Stream live right now.
Oh my god.
Please
Wait,
tell
is this
Facebook
streaming?
to be nice to me.
I mean, while it is possible that Josh Peck was aggressive and assertive towards Belle off camera, and then more playful and fake while on camera, there's also the possibility that he was lying in this instance and he was actually more genuine that night. You therefore have to ask, why would he lie? Why would he make up this false narrative about his former friend? Well, if we put things into a timeline, Belle tweets Peck in June 2017. 2 months later, in late August, Peck uploads the video in which the pair reunite. For the next 4 years, the two are once again friends in the public eye and talk positively about each other. In July 2021 though, Drake Bell pleads guilty to child endangerment, and less than a year later, in March 2022, Josh Peck once again speaks out against Drake Bell, seemingly trying to create some distance between the two. I might discuss this incident more at length at some point in the future. It's definitely one of the most fascinating tales of a former child actor out there, but it's not exactly appropriate for this video. What's more appropriate to say is that as a result of these now deleted tweets and their subsequent interactions, both Drake Bell and Josh Peck's reputations have taken severe hits. Many people deem Drake to be living in the past, riding the highs of the glories from his youth, and potentially even a predator. Many people found Josh, on the other hand, to be disloyal, two-faced, and potentially even a liar. But from one Josh to another, the story of 26-year-old Josh Phillips has become a landmark case in the United Kingdom for what it might mean for the future of online mediation. Why? Well, I won't dare spoil that for you. Let's find out. If there's one thing you need to know about Josh Phillips, it's that he is a huge fan of football. Or soccer to my American audience members. But for the purposes of my sanity, we will be referring to it as football from now on. Anyways, he was a huge football fan, but more specifically a fan of the football club Swansea, one of the biggest teams in Wales. He had attended almost every home game since the age of 4 years old, as well as roughly 15 away games each season, which is fairly admirable considering that Swansea had only been in the top division of English football for 7 of those years. Though, as you might be aware if you're a fan of a sports team, oftentimes the most passionate fans allow both their love and anger to become misguided. This is Michael Obafemi, a Dublin-born, now 23-year-old, and the son of Nigerian parents. Swansea City had announced that he was being loaned out to Burnley in the January transfer window, which had upset Phillips. Despite what you might assume, Phillips is said to have actually quite rated Obafemi as a player, and so upon hearing the news, he was quite sad. He drank his sorrows away with his friends in the pub though, as one drink turned into many. Hours later, and his sorrow had turned to anger. He would reply to Swansea's tweets announcing the transfer with a racial slur in reference to Obafemi. Within 20 minutes, he would delete the tweets, and days later would search up how to delete his Twitter accounts, but by this point his remarks had already been shared around the web. This is when law enforcement got involved. The message would be tracked down to his phone, and when asked, Josh said that it was a stupid mistake that he made while drunk. Phillips, who up until this point had no previous convictions, pled guilty to sending a message on a public communications network that was deemed grossly offensive, indecent, obscene, or menacing, and expressed remorse for the mistake. Swansea Football Club released a statement condemning the message, and the judge would also take action, sentencing Phillip to 12 weeks in prison, suspended for 18 months. He was also given an alcohol ban of 120 days, 25 days of rehabilitation, and 160 hours of unpaid work. He was also banned from going within 2.5 kilometres or 8,200 feet from the Swansea City home stadium when matches are being played. But I can tell you one thing for sure. You're not banned from watching another one of my videos. If you enjoyed this, you should check out my video on Twitter's banned users. That one was really good, I would totally recommend it. Also, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and aside from that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.